Hello and welcome to Modern Sages. This video is a clip taken from our podcast. If you want to learn more or listen to the podcast even further, click the show notes below and that will link you to the direct podcast that you are listening to. I agree with 100% all of that. It's so perfect. I am super interested as you're speaking. You mentioned a little bit about autoimmune and how that was showing up for you. I would love to hear more about that because I do have a story too to share with that is popping up in my mind that I don't really share much about. But I would love to hear your
Yeah,
experiences. You've talked about being super sensitive and how did that show up for you? But how also were you able to navigate that?
yeah. That has a lot of details, so I can go as deep or keep it as surface level as you'd like. But, the first indications for me were was an experience when I was around the age of 4 or 5 of having to be taken to the hospital, not being able to walk. And throughout my life, I just started to have really odd symptoms, just weakness, fatigue, just like overstimulation, just so much going on around me that it was hard for me to navigate my body, some inflammatory indications, but no one was ever able to really give me clarity throughout my childhood, my teenage years. And so it was just something I dealt with. And then it really put me into full impact in my early 20s when I got married, because right away, I went into childbearing years and, with the shift of hormones and everything, my body started to go into a full shutdown mode because I was providing nutrients for baby. And I had so many things going on. And so that was my first indication of autoimmune, and eventually had the diagnosis of 5 autoimmune disorders. And so really it was the path early in my 20s that set me on, a research to go, okay, I've got these diagnoses, and really being incredibly ill, trying to take care of these babies, trying to be a wife, having all kinds of stressors in a relationship, financially, and not only with autoimmune comes anxiety and depression. And so debilitating. I was having 10 to 15 panic attacks a day. And it really got to the point that my body was shutting down and I couldn't walk to the bathroom by myself. It got to the point that, I remember my mom having to come and physically help take care of me and my kids. And it was in that space of my life that I felt kind of a fierce determination within me to say, I have more to do on the planet. I am not meant to be sick for the rest of my life. And so I went on that healing journey to uncover holistically what it was going to take to heal me, because I had a bad experience with doctors trying to drug me. And I'm so sensitive that drugs were horrible for my body. Like I could not handle the medications. And so I knew that I needed to go a different route. I knew that I needed to be alive for my children, and I wanted that. And it was just something within my soul that made me get onto this space where I researched and I researched and I researched, which brings me to the point that I am here, at this particular time, and having decades of life experience, life changes, that now to this day, you would never know that I had experienced autoimmune. Um, and so that's it in a nutshell, but I've done so many things to kind of navigate, coming through that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So did you focus on like changing diet? Did you focus on more was it more holistic? Was it meditation? Was it body work? Like what did you find that was like your starting point of finding relief in all of that?
Initially There in my 20s, there had been a medical practitioner that had really overloaded my system with drugs. And so the starting point for me was to get off of those medications. And
Mm,
so I did go the physical route initially, because I had to start shifting things in my diet. Like that's huge for autoimmune, is inflammatory producing foods, um, things with food dyes, chemicals. And that was a starting point. I had to do a lot of extra supplementation, things that were going to help my body start to heal. And that's so in depth, right? Because we all have our own blueprint. But
right.
for me, that was the process of going, okay, what do I need to do physically? But then I also had to work with the emotions. I had to dive into the mental realm. I had to work with spirit. I had to work with energy. And so that's a great place to be. That's going to make huge changes for an individual. But we also have to look at the aspects of where we've buried traumas, where we've buried these wounds, because they're all interconnected. And that for me, I had to find out on a holistic level what the right balance was for me. And so I needed to go in and do a lot of trauma work. I needed
Yeah.
to focus on inner child work. And those all together, you know, were kind of that culminating part that brought everything together. And so to share it in
Yeah.
a 10-minute, okay, this is what you need to do, you know,
Well,
I'm like, it's been a process,
everybody
right?
is, yeah, and everybody is different in that space. It's so interesting because in my grandma's side, on my dad's side, a lot of autoimmune disease is prevalent. Um, and it's so funny. This is all coming full circle even today. I've been learning more about your ancestral bloodlines and how
Mm-hmm.
everything is connected through that. And so anyways, I want to start teaching a class about that. So I pulled cards to connect into my grandma on my dad's side. And I think that sometimes cards can be a great way for us to just get, it's just like a good, for me, it just opens up the idea of something and then I'll journal and write and things will just come in. Um, but it was so fascinating because I had this experience where I was looking into 1, 2, 3 generations back, and it was connecting into this space of trauma and this space of like a lot of sexual shame. That, of course, growing up in a strict church community, that was like you were taught that, that's the next greatest sin towards murder. Quite literally, you're taught that. And I just remember, like, as I first got married and trying to navigate all of that, like, you're told, "Oh, you can't even have any desire. That's super bad." And then all of a sudden you're married and you're just supposed to be able to just be okay with everything. And
Yes.
I remember laying in the bathtub one night and just like trying to figure out my trauma with it all, trying to navigate my own personal experiences. And I so clearly remember having my ancestors like kneeling by the tub with by me. It was very interesting. But it was I literally could choose at that point if I was going to let this trauma and this heaviness of sexual shame create an autoimmune disease within me. And I was
Wow.
given the choice, are you going to choose this in this lifetime or are you not going to? And I was shocked at how prevalent and how powerful that was for me. And I was like, I don't want to have that. And I could just
Right.
feel my ancestors being like, like breathing, like trying to help me choose what direction
Yes.
I wanted to take. And even
Mm-hmm.
today, I was like pulling these cards and it brought us. I'm like, I don't even want to deal with this. I don't want to talk. I don't want to, like, I just don't want to deal with this right now. And so I even just like started writing a little bit. And then I'm like, I'm just going to sit with this. And so it's funny that it's all coming full circle as we're speaking right now,
I
as
love
even
that.
that being a choice of like, and that's kind of bold to say, like, oh, that was a choice, but really it was. It was
Yes.
crazy.
No, I love that, because as I've worked with so many individuals as well as done my own work and seen like firsthand the ability that we have to shift at a cellular level. And our bodies, our hearts, minds, spirits, energy center, like we have the ability to heal. And to have been able to stepped into that space where, yes, we do have agreements. We do have contracts of where we do come to the planet to experience something or to learn something. But when I was going through, that dark space of going, this is not who I am supposed to be on this planet. There was like a fierce fire from within that I knew something way more powerful than me, that I created a new paradigm. I created that space to say no more in the generational line. Because when I did show up and I was working with ancestors, I remember very specifically certain ancestors that would come in through healing work that I would do that carried these stories of autoimmune, anxiety, depression, very, very dark places. And I felt like I was really a very important piece to go, okay, we can choose something differently.
Right.
And that comes in our connection to our divine ability to create. We don't realize how innately powerful we are to say, I am stepping away from this agreement. I delete it, I cancel it, and I'm letting go. And so I loved that you shared that story of such a personal experience where your ancestors were there. I feel like they're so interconnected to us.
Yeah.
And they're here working with us. Because I did have a personal experience with my dad. And several other ancestors and a sister that I have, that I realized they're here. I mean, we're connected. Our DNA is, we're all working through these lessons together.
Right.
And so I love that you shared that.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If this podcast has piqued your interest, we would definitely recommend you to finish the podcast by clicking the link below. We would also love to invite you to subscribe and to like to our YouTube channel, along with joining our Modern Sages Soul Tribe. This is a tribe of women helping to embrace the medicine within. In this tribe, we will be doing moon gatherings, having classes, and a lot of free content, spiritual gift giveaways, and so much more. If this calls to you, click the link below and join the Modern Sages Soul Tribe. Blessings.